Hey guys, so I have recently started using plain text more and more in my day-to-day workflow. I've started using plain text in emails, I've started using plain text in word processing, and I've started using plain text effectively wherever I have the option to do so. Editing code on websites rather than using any kind of built-in editor, all that kind of stuff. And it's a habit which has been forming somewhat consciously for quite some time now. It started off when it came just to editing HTML code. I manage a fair number of websites, and each with their own CMS, their own way of inputting text, of inputting, style elements and all that kind of stuff. And it's incredibly easy just to be able to put in the code and know that what you put in is what's going to be displayed up on the screen. And that's my sort of de facto way for editing or contributing to websites. And I think a lot of web developers and people who are sort of, they're reasonably comfortable with just the idea of coding and computer protocols and all that kind of stuff. That's sort of the de facto place where we would often go. And it has extended beyond that. Instead of just editing a bit of HTML or CSS there just to tweak a website or to add a text piece or anything like that, it's sort of extended into word processing. If I have a schedule, minutes, agendas, all that kind of stuff that I've got to type up, I often find myself just opening up a text editor rather than a full-blown word processor. And it almost seems instinctive. It almost seems, well, I'm doing a pretty mundane task. I only require a simple application to do the job, and it almost seems to have gone down that path, and that my workflow has become a lot more direct. And I really kind of like what this has done, because when you open up just something like LibreOffice and you start performing a word processing task, your brain and yourself, which is presumably attached to said brain, have to make a lot of decisions, and some of these decisions are conscious, some of these decisions are unconscious. Some of these decisions are going to be what font you're going to be using, what spacing you're going to be using, what your style of your headers is going to be, how you're going to save the document. Does it have to be in a .doc? Does it have to be in a .docx? Does it have to be in a OTF? Different institutions, different companies are going to have different requirements. Some are going to have house guides, and that takes a few of the decisions out of the process. But ultimately, your brain has to deal with 1,000,001 different parameters when working with rich text as opposed to working with plain. When you're working with plain text, all you've got to do is open up a window and start typing. You get to focus essentially 100% on what it is that you're trying to say rather than how it is being presented. And as a freelancer, I come across a lot of people who focus so much more on style over substance, because when you're a freelancer, you're effectively a one-person company. And a lot of freelancers will go through a lot of effort to make themselves and make their setup and make their organization, their company, their product, their brand, whatever it is, look really polished, look really professional, look really slick, look like they've been in business for 20 years, and then sort of not focus so much on the substantive elements behind that. And that, to me, is an observation as to why so many startup businesses struggle in their first year. I say struggle, pretty much 90% of them fail within their first year. And a lot of it is down to inexperienced decision making. And it's these things that are very difficult to teach, impossible to teach. I'm almost certain that anyone that would have worked out how to teach these kind of experiences to people would be making a heck of a lot of money, or at least have a significantly decent YouTube channel. Anyway, that being said, I have noticed that when word processing in plain text, 1,000,001 decisions have been made for you. They've been not even made for you. They've been taken out of the equation. What font do you want your document to be seen in? It doesn't matter. It's up to the decision of the person reading it, and the chances are they'll probably be happy with the default. Most of the time, the default is good enough, and it's only when you kind of want to make, yourself or your institution or your little piece of work, appear to be some cherished little snowflake is when these kind of superficial factors actually come into play. But when we're looking at what it is that we're trying to say, the substantive elements of the projects or whatever it is that we're managing, plain text does the job. It does the job, and it does what it needs to, and only really that. when working in plain text. And when you look at applications like Kate or gedit, they're pretty full-featured when it comes to text editors. They even come with spell checks, which is pretty fantastic. So when editing in plain text, not only have you got the spell check, which to me I think is it's an essential for word processing. I'm not the best speller in the world, and it really helps. But other than that, that's really all you need. You don't need to worry about stylizing your titles. You don't really need to worry about text spacing and all of that. It just lets you focus on the content, and that's really all that's necessary. Same deal with email as well. Do people really care that you've got a nice little fancy logo at the bottom of your email, or the little Twitter logo? Oh, they can follow you on Twitter. They know because you've got that little blue logo down there. No one cares. And to be honest, people probably care less for the annoying fluff that goes around so much stuff these days. And I think minimalism's really going to make a comeback. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. Is that in a lot of cases you don't need that cannon to kill a mosquito. And you know, we do live in this world where there seems to be a snake oil salesman on every corner, willing to dangle the latest and greatest, shiniest object right in front of you, hoping that you'll unquestionably pounce on it. It might come in the form of a new version of Windows. It might come in the form of a brilliant new feature as part of a word processor. But whatever it is, it's always questioning whether or not an additional complication, an additional factor, an additional step in a process is actually going to make that process easier. Because in my experience, generally speaking, and there are many exceptions to it, when you add more and more elements to just about anything, it becomes more complicated and ergo more susceptible to a problem. Or more susceptible to incompatibility. I mean, there are 1,000,001 different file formats you can save, and yes, by all admission, LibreOffice, OpenOffice, Microsoft Office can pretty much open most of them. It's still a problem I still come across on a pretty weekly almost basis, where someone cannot open this Word document or something. Someone comes across a problem that we should really have already solved, and it would have already been solved had we have accepted that a lot of the complications we have are just as a result of the bells and whistles that we don't need. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on the process. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. You guys are always really good with this kind of stuff. But I often feel that with plain text, it removes a lot of the decisions that don't really need to be made. You know, no one really cares that much at the end of the day about things like line spacing and things like what your font is and all that kind of stuff. A file, plain text, can be read by just about any computer on the planet. And keeping it plain text as well actually has additional benefits, because it means that because the text is in such a raw and sort of unformatted format, it makes it easier for like screen readers and blind people to read it as well, and it makes it easier to distribute across the internet. It keeps the file size smaller. There's a number of reasons why keeping something simple is the best way to do it. Just ask the people who are involved with Arch Linux. They love keeping it simple, and it seems to have worked out pretty well for them. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave that with you. Thank you very much for listening. Leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. And until next time, I've been Chris Ware, and you've been awesome. Take care now.